Welcome, ladies and gentlemen of the multiverse, wherever you might be listening. On this Earth, some deep reach in space, or some parallel Earth that has these videos but doesn't have the shows that go with them, so you're learning a little bit with me as you're going. My name is Rogue Convoy, and welcome into the space cruiser I call Ultimate Mayhem. We are now into week number 4, and this is part number 2 of our series. Yesterday I covered Boba Fett, the crime lord, the bounty hunter, and the man who really should have been dead after the Sarlacc pit but somehow managed to escape. Today, though, we're going to go look at the second in command of his group, or his equal. We're going to talk about a little bit about Fennec Shand. Fennec Shand. Okay, so Fennec Shand is a master assassin who worked her way up through the underworld, starting as a mercenary during the time of the Empire. So she was basically working for the Empire, working for the different people. At the time, she was known for her ruthlessness and her skills, as well as being the top of the pile and a cunning strategist. So she was able to basically just, you can determine. Once the Empire fell, Fennec Shand went on the run from her previous employers, a lot of which who ended up in jail or dead in the case of the Hutts. And basically, at one point, her past manages to catch up to her, and she was left for dead in the middle of the desert. And that is where she met Boba Fett originally. So we'll get into more detail about this in a bit. It's just that this is where, at that point, where we're talking about Boba Fett and the link between the two of them. Fennec began her career as a bounty hunter after the beginning of the Empire. So once the Empire started and was going, Fennec managed to find her way as a bounty hunter, found her way as part of the first little bit of the Empire. Fennec began to prove herself to people off the bat, and hence was offered better and better jobs. So she made a name for herself really quick. Basically, she would do her job and then go and give the bounty up, obviously, and then she obviously gained a reputation for it. One of the jobs she started with as a bounty hunter was on the daughter of Jango Fett. So we don't talk about this regularly. The fact is, the movies don't even talk about it at all. Like, the shows talk about it. I know there's a couple of shows like Bad Batch and all that would talk about this. But in movie continuity, there is no sister. There is just basically Boba and Jango. That's it. And so basically, she was taking a bounty on the bounty hunt of Jango Fett, the daughter of Jango Fett, known as Omega. So basically, Boba Fett's twin sister. Again, no continuity with the movies. Fennec clashed with Cad Bane, another hunter like herself, over the child. So basically, if you saw the book of Boba Fett last week, if you haven't, pause the video, go watch it for a second. You'll notice the guy with the tubes coming out of his mouth, the blue face, and the red eyes. That's Cad Bane, as far as I've understood. The hunter failed to bring in the target and moved on to being an assassin for a bunch of different clans within the underworld, predominantly the Hutts. So basically, she moved from bounty hunting and into being an assassin for the Hutts and for several other families. And then after the Empire fell, most of her employers were either dead or ended up in jail. And basically, Fennec went on the run and landed herself in Tatooine. So she basically, after all employers vanished, she vanished, landed on Tatooine as well. Fennec had a bounty placed on her head and hence was being chased by the same people who she was working with. In the deserts of Tatooine, where she was hiding, she managed to make a home for herself in the desert, and then she eventually runs into Din Djarin, as everyone knows, is the Mandalorian, who's also part of the Book of Boba Fett series. We needed 2 episodes of that, apparently. I don't know why we needed the 2 episodes of that, but we needed 2 episodes of that. And Toro Calican, basically, he's a rookie hunter who didn't know who she was at the time. She managed to fight them off for long enough, but 2 of them eventually were overpowered her and took her captive. Fennec tried to convince Toro to let her go and turned him against Din Djarin. Again, I don't know if that's the pronunciation of it. That is what I'm understanding is the pronunciation of the Mandalorian's name, Din Djarin. I could listen to it several times on the show, but I'm trying to figure out this pronunciation. I'm just saying as I understood it. Toro, though, ends up shooting Fennec instead, and the 2 of them basically leave her dead in the desert. So she manages to convince him to turn on the Mandalorian, but she also gets shot in the process. and left for dead in the middle of this the desert in Tatooine. Which, if you know this, Tatooine's desert is quite hot. So Boba Fett was riding along and saw her lying there, and like a bantha joke, you could stick this in there if you want. Figure a place to find one. Um, Boba Fett was riding his bantha, and he picks her up, takes her to a cybernetic specialist who basically saves her life in the process. So he removed her stomach and whatnot, replaced it with some cybernetic thing that basically keeps her alive. So after Fett saved her life, she became part of his crew, grateful for his kindness. So basically, once he gets her up and healthy, he takes her, and she basically becomes part of his crew. The two then travel to the Sarlacc pit, where Boba tries to recover his armor from there, where he believed he left it. But that was not the case. If you saw episode 1, you knew that he lost his armor because the Jawas came over and stole it, and then Tusken Raiders ended up capturing him. After he does not recover it from there, Shan drops a bomb in the Sarlacc pit, and the two of them fly off to different planets. So the Sarlacc was basically trying to take Slave One in. And if you remember correctly from the last video, we talked about Slave One. And Shan dropped the bomb from behind and dropped it into the Sarlacc, and it killed the Sarlacc in the process. So they travel to different planets in Tython, try to recover the armor from that the Jawa stole from them in the first place. So it leads them to the Mandalorian once more. It leads them to Fennec Shan's basically previous captor, and yeah, who had received the armor originally on Tatooine. In exchange for the armor, Fennec and Boba agreed to help Djarin get Grogu back from the Imperial remnant. So apparently, during the one episode, Boba and Fennec agree to help him after the Grogu gets captured by the Imperials, or the former Imperials, I should say. After the operation is a success, Grogu and Din Djarin is returned to Din Djarin, and the two return to Tatooine, where Boba Fett and Fennec Shand raid Jabba's palace and kill the current Daimyo, which is Bib Fortuna, and take the palace for themselves. So that is my look at Fennec Shand, the master assassin, the bounty hunter, the right hand of Boba Fett. So I made a promise. I fulfilled it on my end. I talked about Fennec Shand. I talked about different things. I also talked about, yesterday, I talked about Boba Fett. Now, I'm going to do another set of videos this week. I'm just not sure on who yet. I'm debating if we're really going to taste it or not. That might give you a hint of something. But for now, let the multiverse guide you from wherever you may be. My name is Rogue Convoy, and this was Book of Boba Fett, Part 2, Fennec Shand Edition of Ultimate Mayhem. Thank you.